So yesterday we were talking about where Perek Yud Gimel Pasuk Chav Ches, which is top of page 802. Yeah, we had been speaking about yesterday about the word FS, that they said FS, that it's impossible. That was the word. Instead of saying, but, instead of telling us, you're right in the front of the camera. Instead of telling us the what do you call it, instead of giving a fact, they should have said, yeah, it's a land that flows with milk and honey, and the nation happens to be very strong and very fortified. So now they're telling us facts, but instead of that, it said FS, but it's impossible for us because. So they're offering an opinion. We didn't ask for your opinion. And that word FS, we said yesterday, lack of control of the mouth is what costs people in life very often. That's where we got into yesterday. If you take a look, okay, that's where we're at, 3 lines from the top. By the way, I was once at the drinking fountain here in the Yeshiva, and that's going back a lot of, not the drinking fountain, the coffee machine. They had a coffee machine, what's it called, the vending machine. So I had like a 10 shekel coin. I needed change. So the guy gave me change. One of the Bachram was here, and he was a guy, base medrash guy. So I said, can I have change? So he gave me change. I said, thanks. So he looks at me, he goes, no problem, dog. And he turns around and he starts walking away. Now, I wasn't the least bit insulted, by the way, to be called a dog. I wasn't. That means I've made it. You know, I am officially a dog, D-A-W-G, I guess. You know, a dog. That is the ultimate compliment in the ghetto, isn't it? To be called a dog. So I was a dog, and what I really expected him to do was take a couple of steps and then turn around and just go, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to call you a dog. I just, he never even broke stride. He just walked off into the sunset, and he left me there, and I just stood there. I was smiling. I remember that's why I was amused by it. I just stood there and lapped up my coffee, because I'm now a dog, just complete. We have zero verbal control nowadays. We're just talking about cell phones. People are talking. Some people with the phone all day long, talk. There's never, it never stops. But what ends up happening is that the Gemara says, a word is worth 1 zuz and silence is worth 2. There's a reason we have lips and a row of teeth. We have a double coverage on our mouth. Think twice before you open your mouth. That's the lesson. In any event, that is what we did yesterday. Then they continued with their speech. Amalek Yoshev be'eretz hanegev. They say to the Jewish people, listen, Amalek is in the south, and they purposely invoke Amalek because that's the first fight they had, and they're trying to intimidate them as much as possible. Ve'achiti ve'ayavusi ve'amori Yoshev Bahar, these other 3 nations are on the mountain. Ve'aknani Yoshev alayam ve'alayada yarden, and the Canaanites are by the sea and by the Jordan. I mean, they got all the borders covered over here. Before we even get into the land, we got trouble. Vayahas Kaleb esa'am el Moshe. Kaleb silences the people, not Kaleb speaks up. He silences the people to Moshe. Now, before we even continue, Vayomer, he says, Olo Nala will go up, V'yarashnu osa, we will take it over, Ki yachol nuchala, because we could. So, look very carefully at Rashi here. Vayohas Kaleb el esa'am, he silences the people to Moshe. What does that mean? What does that mean structurally? How does that make any sense? He silences the people to Moshe. So take a look at what Rashi says, quoting the Medrash. It's the right column, 5 lines from the top. Vayahas Kaleb, hishtik es kulam. He got everybody quiet. Shh. And then he said like this, El Moshe, lishmoa ma yedaber b'Moshe. They wanted to hear what's he going to speak against Moshe. Tzavach ve'omar, he pulled a real fast one on them. V'chizu bilvad asor, is that all that Moshe did to us? So at that point, Hashomea yasover shebol l'saper, because everybody thought, oh, he's going to say something else bad about Moshe. Is that all that Moshe did to us? And everybody's, yeah, what else? Now everybody's listening, paying attention. Umitoch shahaya believe him al Moshe, because they had it in for Moshe. Bishvil divrei meraglim, because once the meraglim spoke, the people already had it in for Moshe. Shasku kulam lishma. Genusa, everybody was quiet to hear, okay, what kind of schmutz is Kaleb going to bring up now? V'halo karo lanu es hayam, he split the sea. V'horid lanu es haman, he brought down the man. V'higiz lanu es haslav, and he brought the slav. So all of a sudden he turns positive. So Kaleb pulled a fast one on the people. He knew he's got to get their attention. How am I going to get their attention? By making them think I'm going to join in with the Meraglim and say something negative. So he says, you think that's all that he did to us? Yeah, what else? Yeah. He split the sea, and he brought down and like, that wasn't where we expected him to be going with this. He takes them by surprise. Now, if you'll notice, he says to them, again, and then he says, Olo nale, we can go up. V'yarashnu osa, ki yochol nuchala. Yes, we could go up. So the commentaries say over here two things. Number one, Kaleb is saying to them, what are you worried about? You heard the prophecy from Eldad and Medad, the prophecy that Moshe is going to die and Yeshua is going to take us into the land, and therefore you're all panic-stricken because how can we go into the land without Moshe Rabbeinu? How can we go into the land without Moshe if Moshe has been leader? Vayas Kaleb esam el Moshe, he was trying to say to people, it's not Moshe. It's not Moshe that we have to rely on. We have to rely on God. And God said we could do it. It's don't put, yes, Moshe is our leader and Moshe is everything good and look what Moshe has done for us, but it's not about Moshe. Do you notice what classic Jewish Torah text? There's a certain Torah text that we read every year that does not have Moshe Rabbeinu's name in it. What's that? Pesach, exactly correct. The Pesach Haggadah. You sit at the Pesach Seder and we talk about leaving Egypt, Yetzias Mitzrayim and leaving Egypt. And who is conspicuously absent from the Pesach, from the Haggadah? Moshe Rabbeinu. There's no mention of Moshe Rabbeinu. Why? I mean, he was the star of the show, wasn't he? So why is Moshe Rabbeinu missing from the Haggadah? For the same reason. Because on the night of Pesach, when we're recollecting and we're recounting this leaving Egypt, it's not about Moshe, it's about Hashem. Moshe was an agent. It wasn't Moshe, it was Hashem. Moshe was the leader, and he was the chosen one to be. But we should not think, and that's Vayas Kaleb esam el Moshe. He's purposely telling the people, don't focus so much. You're right, he's going to die. Okay, we'll be okay. And then he says, Olo na'ale v'yarashnu osa ki yochol nuchala. So this, the Mefarshim say, when the Meraglim came back, they called it an Eretz Ocheles Yoshveha. It's a land that consumes its dwellers. What does the word Yoshev mean? What does land? Anybody know what does the land Yoshev mean? To sit. And what does Kaleb say? Olo nala, we'll go up. Now listen to this. There are Mefarshim that say he's talking about spiritual levels over here. That at the highest level, the Meraglim are saying, listen, we're going to go into the land of Israel. It's a land of prosperity. What's going to happen to us as Jews? We're going to stay stagnant. We are going to be consumed by prosperity, and therefore our spiritual level is going to be, we're not going to move. And Kaleb is saying, no, Olo na'ale. We're going to go into the land of Israel, and in spite of the prosperity, we could still grow as Jews. Then people ask, the idea of how many types of Jews are there in the world? And the answer is there are two types of Jews. I've told you, it doesn't matter what color your hat is. It doesn't even matter if you're not wearing a hat. It doesn't matter what color your clothing is, as long as it's black. It doesn't matter what color your clothing is. It doesn't matter what color your hat is or if you wear a hat. It doesn't matter. There are only two types of Jews in the world. There are those who are growing and those who are not growing. I don't care how long your payas are, and I don't care how many times you dip in the mikveh with a scuba equipment and stay down there. I don't care what you do. Are you growing or are you stagnating? And if you're stagnating, you're going, by definition, there are only two directions. It's up or down. There's no middle ground. There's no such thing as treading water. No such thing as treading water. You're either growing as a Jew or you're stagnating. The Meraglim say it's an Eretz Yocheles Yoshveha, a land that consumes those that sit. Where by definition, we're not going to be growing. It's not good for us. You always appeal to the frum side. Listen, for all you frummies out there, don't worry, we're going to go into Israel. We're not going to be able to grow as Jews. And Kaleb says, no. Vayomer Olo na'ale v'yarashnu osa ki yochol nuchala. So what? Now the Meraglim pull off the gloves. Up until now, they were discouraging. Now they pull off the gloves. They weren't expecting this from Kaleb. And by the way, do you see something remarkable that Kaleb has done? He's taken on, without any hesitation, he's going up against both the Meraglim and the Jewish people. Now this happened once before in history. And what was the result? Does anybody remember? What happened at the Egel? Who got killed? What was his name? Hur. And Rashi points out that he was the son of Miriam. Remember, Hur was the one who spoke when Aaron saw that Hur got killed. So Aaron said, "Okay, I can't use that path. So we'll have to go try to deceive, try to delay tactics." And that's why they came up with the golden calf. He said, "All right, go get your gold to get it off your wives." Which would hopefully delay things. Hey, guy comes home. He says, "Hi, Marilyn. Could I have your golden earrings? What for?" Well, we got something going down with Aaron over there. Yeah, what? Because the women they always smell the rat first. Well, no, So Aaron's trying to. Why did Aaron do that? Why did he resort to delay tactics? Because he saw the Hur got killed, protest against the people. He was the son of Miriam. It's Moshe's nephew. It's Aaron's nephew. Who was the brother-in-law? Who was Miriam's husband? Kaleb. Kaleb, who's the father of Hur, and he saw what happened to his son, and without any hesitation, he's willing to do the same thing. Now, the Meraglim weren't ready for this, because the Meraglim were thinking that Kaleb's on our side. All along, he had been, remember we spoke yesterday about the deception. He was with the Mossad. He made it look like he's one of them. And then at the last minute, he pulls the bomb. And he's on their turf. And all of a sudden, Kaleb comes along now, and Kaleb says, no, it's good. Moshe Rabbeinu did this and we could go in. Oh boy, they weren't ready for that. We can't go in. They're too strong for us. At this point, they say, let's get this clear. We can't go in. So the Meraglim come back. The Meraglim come back, and they say, absolutely not. Keep this little conversation in mind. I don't know if we'll get to it today, but we're going to get to it tomorrow. But you keep this little exchange between Kaleb and the Meraglim, what happened over, keep it in mind. Vayotziu, so they spread a bad report. Vayotziu dibasa aretz asher torosa b'nei Yisrael lemar, ha'aretz asher avarnu v'lo surosa, the land which we crossed in to see, eretz ocheles yoshveh, it's a land that consumes its inhabitants. The people that we saw in it are people, how does he translate it? Huge. Are people of, the people we saw were huge. Okay, Anshe Midos, Rashi says Anshe Midos refers to when an extremely tall person walks into the room. We had a guy in our neighborhood who's probably the tallest frum Jew in Eretz Yisrael. He had a guy, he left our neighborhood, but he used to live in our neighborhood. It's probably tallest from, and this guy was somewhere between 6'11" and 7'2". And I always used to I never had the guts to go up at him and ask him how tall he is. But I always kind of tried to take a look at where he is standing relative to the wall of the shul. And I wanted always one day to sneak in with a tape measure and just get a measure of this guy. I mean, this guy was really tall. You're talking about close to 7 feet, on either side of 7 feet. Now, when a guy like that walks into the room, he's the type of person that I look at and start thinking about, I wonder how tall that is. I wonder how tall that is. When a guy 5'7" walks into the room, it's not like anybody looks at him and goes, boy, what do we got there? No, that's a solid 5'8" for sure. Nobody's looking. When a guy walks in as remarkably tall, so that what Anshe Midos means that these are people of measure, meaning these are the types of people that people are looking at like, I wonder what that is over there. And I wonder how tall that is, number one. Number two, what is Midos always associated with? Character traits. Why is it called Midos? Why is it called Midos? Why do when you talk about you have to refine your Midos? Does he have good Midos? That's what they always ask on when they're checking out a shidduch. I get a call from a lady. Hi, I heard about this boy somebody recommended. Does he have good Midos? What I really want to say is, well, yeah, but do you? You're a 10, but being a gentleman, I try to answer the question honestly. But I told you I once had one lady called me up. She said she was asking about a certain boy, I said, do you want to tell me about your daughter? She didn't have to. I wasn't involved in the shidduch. She was asking about the boy. I have to give an honest evaluation. I said, do you want to tell me about your daughter? She goes to me, yes, she's very smart. She has 3 degrees. So I cut her off and I said, well, everybody has challenges in life. I'm sure she'll be able to overcome it. She goes, what? I said, well, girls too smart. Guys don't like that. They're very intimidated by that. They could be, she'll have to learn how to subtract. No, she's a very nice girl. They ended up getting married. The guy runs circles around her. He's much smarter than her. But the way it goes, so midos is your measure of character development. Somebody once said he went out with this girl. She had so many degrees, she was more like a thermometer than a person. But what do you call it? The midos is character. Why is it called midos? Midos is measure. Why is our behavior called midos? You have to have very refined midos. The midah of anger, the midah of humility, the midah. Why is it called a midah? Anybody know? Why is it called a midah? What do you say?
It actually means measure, and
so why is it called a measure?
Because you need to have good midos means you can properly control the measures of your character traits.
Very good. Very good, very good, exactly correct. That means even something like selfishness. There are certain times in life where you have to be concerned about yourself. How much? Where's that line? Where's that line of how much I should be giving, and where's that line of how much I should be concerned with myself? Where's the line of self-respect, and where do you cross over that line into haughtiness or arrogance? We have to have a certain amount of self-respect. We're not allowed to. We'll even see in the Parsha. You have to have a certain amount of self-respect. You have to present yourself well. You have to be clean. You have to be neat. You have to be orderly. How much? Where's that line? All of this. Sometimes you have to be very firm with people. Sometimes you have to be very strict with people. You're raising a family. You have to be very firm. Where's that line with your kids of firmness? Where's the line with kids where you should bend a little and give in? All of these things are very, very precisely measured. It's very, very delicate, and that's why midos. Now, the land of Canaan. What were they saying? Now we have to see the beginning of the Rashi first. Take a look at the first part of the Rashi. They say it's a land that consumes its inhabitants. Take a look at Rashi. It's the left column. You have to see the Rashi inside. Left column, second line. If you find it, please show the person next to you. Ocheles Yoshveh. B'chol makom she'avarnu. Everywhere we went, matsanum kovre mesim. We found that they were burying the dead. Everywhere we went, there were funerals. So you go into the land of Israel to check out the land, and everywhere you see people are getting buried all over the place. Funerals. Now, what would your conclusion be? What would your conclusion? You walk into a new land. Hey, I want to show you. Maybe you're interested in purchasing some real estate here in Canaan. And you go walk around. Everywhere you go, people are being buried, left, right, and center. Their funerals. What would your reaction be? I don't know. Right. So what did they say? It's a land that consumes their inhabitants. The place is contaminated. The place is obviously contaminated. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu also l'tova. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was doing it a favor. Kidei l'tordam be'evlam. He wanted to distract the Canaanites because they're mourning and they're grief-stricken. V'lo yitnu leiv leos. They shouldn't pay attention to this minion that's walking around their land. You got the traveling minion like El Al planes. It's a traveling minion. It's the flying Stiebel. Mincha. They can't serve the drinks on El because we're davening. That. So why they're trying to be distracted? So I understand. So what's the fault of the Meraglim? You're only reporting what you saw. You went. How am I supposed to know that Hashem did that to distract us? You went in there and you saw funerals and you came back and said this place is contaminated. And that's why they emphasize that these are anshe midos. They're saying, you know what? And these are very fine people. They're not dying as a punishment because they're such fine people. Now, that's a chutzpah because we know that the Canaanites were the biggest, most despicable acts of perversion that they were involved in. They were the most morally corrupt nation, and they were into all sorts of pagan ideas. And you're telling me they're anshe midos? That's a chutzpah. They're such fine people. It's like saying, meeting a bunch of motorcycle gang members and saying, "Oh, they're such good guys." Really fine, walking Mesilas Yesharams. That's what they. It's like chutzpah. Number one. Number two, how are they saying? Why is it their fault? Why is it their fault? The answer is twofold. Number one, imagine the time of the bubonic plague. There's plague in Europe, a bubonic plague. Who got blamed, of course? The Jews, right? Because the Jews didn't have as much plague. You know why? Always washing. Jews are always washing. There always has some washing. There's always water lurking somewhere, right? Yeah, you wash when you get up. You wash before you eat. You wash after you eat. You wash before. You wash just because. You wash. Jews are always washing up. There's always water. So the Jews get blamed. Okay, what did the funerals look like during the time when a third of Christian Europe died? There were no funerals. You loaded them up in wheelbarrows and you dropped the bodies into a grave and got out of there as fast as you can so you don't get the plague. That's what was going on. If they're conducting funerals, that means it's not a plague. That means you should have been able to read that this is what we call hashgacha pratis, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing it, so they should be distracted. If it would really be plague and contaminated, so then they wouldn't be going out around having funerals. Obviously, this is a one-off, not a regular occurrence. Number one. Number two, if the air is contaminated. So what do you think the fruit's people are dying because of contaminated air. What's the fruit gonna look like? Oh, this big, luscious, beautiful fruit. No, that's not what would happen if there's contamination and plague. Then the fruit would be rotten and the fruit would be all bug infested and so on and so forth. There was enough evidence here. What were they saying? They say, boy, this is like, the air is so bad over here. People are dying. Now you got mutant fruit over here like Empire of the Ants. Right, yeah, I told you the movie. I once saw a movie called Empire of the Ants, where the ants got caught in radiation, and of course they're giant ants. They're a bunch of mutant ants. It was a double feature: Empire of the Ants and The Incredible Melting Man, which was this double feature. It was the second movie where the man gets caught in radiation, and instead he starts shrinking. Right? I had enough radiation for one day. We walked out after about 10 minutes. Couldn't take another one of those. So it was never a big hit. But so they're coming back. They're reading the data. The data is a tricky thing to read. And they're saying the data indicates that there's plague, people are dying, and that the fruit is mutant fruit. And they're blamed for it because there was enough evidence to not come to that conclusion. Okay. Take a look at the next pasuk. V'sham ra'inu es hanefilim, b'nei anak min hanefilim. We saw these giants. V'anehi be'einenu kechagavim. We were like grasshoppers in their eyes, in our eyes. Sorry, we were like grasshoppers in our eyes. V'chein hayinu be'eineihem. And that's how we were in their eyes. So, the question is how they know. We know how we felt. We felt like grasshoppers. But how did they feel about us? How did they know? So Rashi brings down the medrash that they overheard the giants looking at them saying, oh, there are a bunch of ants down there out in the fields. There are ants crawling around. So this is what I told you earlier about self-respect. My Rabbi once said that a person, if you feel about yourself that you're an ant, that's how people are going to see you. If a person feels that you're completely spineless and insignificant, some people see you that you're insignificant. Sometimes they said somebody is feeling he has an inferiority complex. If a person has an inferiority complex, it's generally because he's inferior. That's why he has the inferiority complex. Most guys in the NBA don't have an inferiority complex. So if you have to project yourself a certain way. There's a whole science. I mean, you guys have gone to job interviews. There's a whole what they call discipline of how you're supposed to. Isn't there a whole instruction booklet of how you present yourself on a job interview? How you're supposed to sit? Well, don't sit like this. I once asked Rabbi Tatz, maybe when you go to an interview, you ought to sit like this. That'll project confidence. I think he said it projects unemployment. So you're not supposed to sit like this, like you're too eager, and you don't sit like this because in body language that means that you're creating a distance. You're supposed to. There's a certain way you're supposed to, even though you're nervous as heck. But there's still a certain way you're supposed to. You have to present yourself, and they talk about body language and all these things. So in life, it's important to project yourself. If you got an ability, or if you got show that you have to be confident without coming across as being cocky. It's a trick. The best way to do it is by genuinely being confident without being cocky. You have to be confident. The person has to be confident of themselves and their abilities without being cocky. And if you are cocky, that'll come across. So I once rejected a shidduch. I had a shidduch candidate for my daughter. So we used to meet when it's your daughter on the line. So the father goes and meets one in the shidduch. You meet the boy before you ever. So for one of my daughters, the first daughter got married. Then my second daughter, so I was recommended a certain boy, and we're looking for certain criteria. Boy is serious about his growing and his learning and everything else. And that was the information that we got. But the information is a double-edged sword. So I went with my wife to meet this guy, and we met him. It was actually here in the yeshiva. We had a meeting here. We had to meet for 10, 15 minutes. So I walk in. The guy's not wearing a tie. Normally, a guy on the meeting, a prospective father-in-law, he dresses himself. The guy's kind of wearing a tie. He's got his jacket draped over his arm. His hat is cocked back at a jaunty angle. And we sat down, and the guy's kind of sitting like this. He's kind of sitting like this. And my wife was sitting. He wouldn't make eye contact with my wife, not because of frumness, only because he was just too lazy to turn his head. And the Makeh B'Patish, which is the final blow, is when I said to the guy, well, what do you do during, he was learning in yeshiva. I said, what do you do Bein Hazmanim? So the guy says to me, well, I learn. What do you do? Just like that. Oh, okay. All right. And then we ended it. And so my wife and I walked out to go get a cab. All I did was I looked at her, and she just went like this. Yeah, we never even discussed it. That was as far as the discussion got. The next week, we met another guy who ended up marrying my daughter. Yeah, he ended up marrying my daughter, and he was respectful. He answered questions. It was a completely different ballgame. But you want to present yourself. He was pleasantly nervous. You should be nervous. You're meeting up with your future. You should be a little bit nervous. And so they say, well, listen, we were like you felt like a grasshopper. People see you as a grasshopper. Number one. Number two, the Mefarshim say at a deeper level over here that there's a very, very fundamental concept in Judaism. There's something called bitachon. You trust in God, right? Do you really trust in God? How much do you trust in God? So people go to the fortified rooms over here. What are you thinking when you're in your fortified room? What are you thinking about? Okay, now I'm safe because I'm in the fortified room. Then it's between you and the fortified room. What you should be thinking is, I'm in the fortified room because this is what's required of me as far as hishtadlus. But ultimately what's protecting me over here is HaKadosh Baruch Hu is protecting me. So when it comes to parnasa, you have bitachon or you don't have it. We go to work because Hashem says go to work. That's what Adam Harishon was told, B'zei asapecha toch alechem. You're going to have to work for your parnasa. So we work because Hashem said go to work. But ultimately, that's only hishtadlus. Where is the parnasa really coming from? Now, if you really think the parnasa is dependent on you, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, all right, so do it yourself. And there's a very fine line between how much hishtadlus and how much bitachon. Now, there's a famous story with Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. I think it was Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. A guy came to Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, he's down and out. And he said, listen, what should I do? I haven't got parnasa, I got to marry off my kids. We're struggling. What should I do? He said, buy a lottery ticket. There's a lottery ticket, you can win 10,000 rubles. Massive amount of money. He says, okay. He says, buy a lottery ticket. So the guy buys a lottery ticket. So Yisrael Salanter says to him, do you believe you're going to win? He says, oh, absolutely. If you say I'm going to win, I'm going to win. You sure you're going to win? 100%. He says, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal right now. I'll give you 5,000 rubles cash right now, and you sell me the lottery ticket. The guy says, okay. So Yisrael Salanter says, that's why you're not going to win. If you really believed you would win 10,000 rubles, you'd be a fool to sell it now for 5,000. So you don't really believe you're going to win. So how could you possibly win? That means that the bitachon has to be, we actually activate the response to the degree of our bitachon. So what they're saying is, we became chagovim, we became grasshoppers. Our hearts melted. Our hearts melted means that our level of trust in God has become condensed. It's downgraded. And at that point, we're cooked. And that's what they're trying to convince the Jewish people. There's no bitachon over it. These guys are going to mash us to pieces. At that point, then you're right. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu's bitachon is withdrawn. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu's supervision is withdrawn. Now, take a look at Pasuk Vav. Go down a little further. Sorry, Perik Yud, where are we? Perik Yudal Pasuk Aleph. Sorry, I skipped this. Perik Yudal Pasuk Aleph. Vatisa kol ha'eda vayitnu es kolam. Everybody starts crying. Vayivku ha'am balayla hahu. And the people cry on that night. Now you'll notice that there seems to be a repetition here. Because first it says, Vatisa kol ha'eda, the entire congregation went ahead, vayitnu es kolam, they raised their voices. Vayivku ha'am balayla hahu. And the people cried on that night. Well, who are we talking about? We're talking about the nation, right? So why does it repeat the nation? It should really say, Vatisa kol ha'eda vayitnu es kolam, vayivku balaylahu. Why does it emphasize again, vayivku ha'am balaylahu? That word ha'am seems to be redundant. Why do you need that? What's that doing in the pasuk? You heard the problem. You heard the question. Why does it say ha'am? Why do you need the word ha'am? So, your father ever say to you, you want to cry, I'll give you something to cry about? You know, one of those lines they learn in father's school. You want to kvetch? I'll give you something. You want to whine? I'll give you something to whine about. Ever hear that? We've all heard that, and we've all said it at some point. I don't think I've ever said it, by the way. I can tell you as a father, I've never said that. There's also the other one that you always heard was, doesn't anyone around here turn off lights? Am I the only one that turns off the lights around here? That's also they teach you that in father school. So the people are crying. So what's the punishment going to be for this gentleman? What happens as a result of their crying? HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, oh, you're crying for no reason? Now I'll give you a reason to cry. What night was this? Does anybody know? Night of Tishah B'Av. Tishah B'Av becomes the night of crying throughout generations, and that's why it repeats the word ha'am. It says, Vaitisa kol ha'eda vayitnu es kolam. That's referring to the people in that generation. Vayivku ha'am balaylahu. The nation, the Jewish people throughout history, are going to cry on Tishah B'Av. Tishah B'Av was the night, the first that the Meraglim, that the Meraglim cried. Tishah B'Av was when the first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Tishah B'Av was when the second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Tishah B'Av becomes a night, and World War I began on Tishah B'Av, which was not good for the Jews. And according to many, World War II was simply a continuation of World War I. Okay, it didn't start on. It would have been nice if that started on. That would have fit. Not nice. It would have fit well if they'd also started on Tishah B'Av. But Tishah B'Av becomes a day of crying for eternity because they were crying for no reason. Okay, skip on ahead and go on down to on page 804 at the top of the page. I'll tell you an interesting concept here. V'Yoshua bin Nun v'Kaleb ben Yefuna min haTorah v'Ha'aretz karu es bigdeihem. Moshe and Aaron fell over Moshe and Aaron fell on their faces before the entire congregation. V'Yoshua bin Nun v'Kaleb ben Yefuna min haTorah v'Ha'aretz karu bigdeihem. Yoshua and Kaleb, they rent their garments. Now in the previous pasuk it says that when the people heard, and the people said, all right, we're going to get smettered, let's go back to Egypt. Look at the bottom line on page 802. Sorry, bottom line, page 802 for a second. So there it says, Vayipol Moshe v'Aaron al Paneim. Moshe and Aaron they're so destitute, they fall over forwardly. They call Kahal Adasi b'nei Israel. V'Yoshua bin Nun v'Kaleb ben Yefuna, Yoshua and Kaleb min ha'Torah ha'aretz karu bigdeihem. They rent their garments. Now you'll notice, by the way, who did the talking up until now? Who was it that took on the Meraglim? It was Kaleb. Why didn't Yeshua say anything? At this point, why didn't Yeshua say, yeah, we could go into the land of Israel?
Too close. He was Moshe's right-hand man.
And therefore what? Too close to what?
Moshe.
Specifically?
The land.
The prophecy.
Moshe's
What
dead.
was the prophecy?
Moshe's
Moshe is going to die and Yeshua is going to become the leader. Oh, no wonder you want to go in. And why didn't the Meraglim want to go in? You know what the Zohar says? What was really motivating them? Why these guys were tzaddikim, they're leaders. What was cooking them that they're so desperate not to go into the land of Israel? They were concerned they're going to go into the land of Israel and they're going to lose their positions. They're leaders. Why should they lose their positions? First of all, whenever there's a change, a change of any sort of administration, everybody gets a little bit nervous. You always talk about in the Knesset, in the Israeli Knesset, whenever there's going to be a vote to dissolve the government, it doesn't happen. Because the members of the Knesset who are going to dissolve the government realize that they may not get into the next Knesset as politicians. And the expression we use in Israel is their seats, they're glued to their seats. So the Meraglim are worried we're going to go into Israel. There's going to be a whole change. We may lose our positions here, number one. Number two, there's going to be a king. When the Jewish people go into the land of Israel, they're going to make a king. And when there's a king, so the king's going to take over, and therefore we're going to be insignificant. So underlying all of this is their ego there. That's what's underlying this whole thing. That's what the Zohar says. Now, Yoshua and Kaleb, they come back and they rend their garments. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron, they simply fell over? And Yoshua and Kaleb are rending their garments, which is a sign of what? A sign of mourning. What's the difference? There's a very subtle difference between Moshe Rabbeinu and Yoshua and Kaleb. What happened here? Moshe and Aaron falling over always represents some sort of petition, davening, prayer. So there's still hope that something can happen here. Yoshua and Kaleb, they're rending their garments. Our fate is sealed. They know that there's going to be a big one. It's going to be bad. Why do they know and Moshe Rabbeinu don't? You know what the Mefarshim say? Because they had gone into Eretz Yisrael. By going into Eretz Yisrael, they picked their level up. Just getting into the land of Israel picks up the level. And it brings us to a very big question, which is, should you live in Israel? It's a very big question. Should you live in Israel? Right? It's a tricky question. And the answer is it a mitzvah to live in Israel? Well, let me ask you a question. Is it a mitzvah to put on tefillin? Do you have to? Do you have to put on tefillin at least once a day? Yes. Is it a mitzvah to shech the cow? It is, because you make a bracha. When they shech, they make a bracha on the mitzvah of shechting. Did you ever shecht? Do you ever plan on shechting? I never have. I can't even watch it. People ask me what I'm going to do in the Beis HaMikdash. I'm a Kohen. The answer to that is the Gemara says that a Yisrael, a non-Kohen, could do the shechting. So I'll have some Yanan Yisrael with me. Hey, buddy, come on in with me. I'll take you up there. Okay, shecht it. To skin it, roast it, and eat it, that I could do. I have no problem. You know, the shechting part is not good for me. Have you ever shechted? Do you plan on shechting? So what about the mitzvah of shechita? The answer is there are two types of mitzvahs. There's what's called a mitzvah chiyuvis, a mandatory mitzvah, and there's a mitzvah kiyumis, that when you do it, you're fulfilling a mitzvah. You don't have to. When you shech the cow, you're doing the mitzvah. You don't have to shech the cow. It's not like, okay, guys, let's go to Minyan, let's put on our tefillin, and now let's go shechting. Right? You don't have to go to shecht. You have to put on tefillin every day. It's a mitzvah chiyuvis. Is it a mitzvah to live in the Eretz Yisrael? Is it a mitzvah? For sure. What kind of mitzvah? Chiyuvis or kiyumis? It's a mitzvah, kiyumis. If you live in Israel, you're fulfilling a mitzvah. You don't have to be living in Israel. That's as far as on the mitzvah level. Now let's take it on a personal level. Should you live in Israel? So Rav Dessler says, Eretz Yisrael, you know, there's the Zionist movement, the movement of living in Eretz Yisrael. That would be roughly the equivalent of saying there's a tefillinist movement. There's a mitzvah of putting on tefillin. Let's make a movement out of it. Rav Dessler says that Eretz Yisrael is one of the best tools that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us. But it's a tool. It's not an ends in and of itself. It's a tool for growth. If you're trying to drill a hole and I give you a hammer is a very good tool. Hammer is a great tool. Is it the right tool for you right now? Not if you're trying to drill a hole, even though that's what I'd prefer to use. Much easier, you know, just knock it with the hammer. But it's the wrong tool. And it's the wrong tool for you under these circumstances. Eretz Yisrael is a great tool if it's the right tool for you. But there are a lot of considerations before you live in Israel. Are you going to grow as a Jew? Will you have parnasa if you're living in Israel? Are you going to have family here to support you and help you out and have, when you have children, to help you take care of your children? A lot of considerations. It's not a one-off, a very quick decision. You have to consider many factors before deciding to live in Israel. For some people, living in Israel is a very, very good thing. For other people living in Israel, it can be very, very challenging, and then they lose their joy in life. It's a mitzvah to be besimcha. And you lose your enthusiasm for Yiddishkeit because everything's just a hassle everywhere you go. And therefore the decision to live in it, there are many benefits. You're among Jews, and you could eat sunflower seeds, and and there are many benefits of living in Eretz Yisrael. But it's only if it's a benefit for you as an individual, and you have to have guidance on that. You have to have a mentor who's going to tell you, yes, for you at this point in life, it's a good thing to live in Israel. Otherwise, it may not be the right choice right now, maybe later on down the line, and maybe never. And a person has to be very, very careful before. You know, I was once in Columbus, Ohio. That's where my wife is from. It's not my fault. That's where she's from. And so I went into an optometry shop. I had to fill out a form. We're married about a few years. We're living in Israel already. And I had to fill out this form in the optometry shop. So I had to form my name and where we live. The young lady behind the counter is obviously not Jewish. And she picks up this thing. She starts reading it with her eyes. And also she goes, Jerusalem. You live in Jerusalem. Is it fun to live in Jerusalem? Gentlemen, I want to tell you something. It takes a lot to get me speechless. I was speechless. Is it fun to live in Jerusalem? My wife and I took a lot of things into consideration before moving here. We had thought about, learning and growth and chinuch and a job. We never once looked at each other and said, and it's fun to live in Jerusalem. I mean, there are moments of fun, like when you're walking on the sidewalk and a bus drives up on the sidewalk and honks you out of the way. That's fun. And when you go into a government office with your important documents, and the lady behind the counter is eating a falafel and drips tchina all over it, that's fun. And if you try to find an address in Sanhedria Murchevet, that's fun. But the addressing system in Sanhedria Murchevet, I'm not sure what they were thinking, because you have Building 41. And right next to it is 117A. So I'm not quite sure exactly how this happened. Is that fun? Fun? We're not here for fun. We're not in the world for fun. We're not living for fun, and we're not in Eretz Yisrael for fun. It's a great place for growth if it's the right place for you. I once heard a tape from Rabbi Victor Miller. You've heard of Rabbi Victor Miller? So he even said, and I'm not making this up. He said somebody asked him, "Should we live in Israel?" So Rabbi Victor Miller said, asking me if you should live in Israel is like asking if you should live in Chicago. He used Chicago as an example. That's why it stood out. Because you go where you can grow. Some people will grow better in America, some people will grow better in Israel, and some people will grow better in just about anywhere else in the world other than Afghanistan. So you have to know what's right for you. That's what Kaleb and Yosh, but if you do live in Israel, there are advantages on a spiritual level. Kaleb and Yoshua got into Eretz Yisrael. They picked up their level for at least temporarily, that they knew something Moshe and Aaron didn't know. Our fate is sealed. Okay, we'll see tomorrow what happens. Okay.